This video is going to be more centered around somewhat of a divided topic within the design industry and illustration and just, kind of art in general. And that is, should you have a particular art style? Should you have a style? More quotation marks. Now, this is something I've personally struggled with I would say my entire career as an artist, as a designer, illustrator, whatever. Specifically starting within illustration, which is where I kind of began my art journey. And all throughout it, I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen people be extremely successful, being totally niched, having their set style. They know their shit. They just blast through what they know best, and they gain tons of followers, tons of work, all because of that specific style and what that reads to those viewers. And then I've seen the other side, which I feel more resonant with, which is kind of like all over the place. And they're still very, good at what they do. And they are technically a designer, illustrator, motion designer, whatever, but everything looks different. It's a little harder to tell that one person made all of these things. There may or may not be like a quality difference, but regardless, there is no one set style. And I've talked to people on both sides of the coin, both sides of the fence as well. And it's pretty split, I think as an almost 27-year-old and have been freelancing almost 3 years now, I can confidently say it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what side you're on. It's specific to the artists themselves and what best serves them and their purpose and their goals. And there are certainly pros and cons to each side. So in this video, I'm just going to kind of roughly talk through, this is from my perspective, what I've kind of seen on both sides of the coin. I'm leaning more on the side of like being a versatile designer. I might be wrong on some things on the more niche side, but this is just from talking with friends who are in that respective category, or at least they kind of generally fit the bill of being more niche. So hopefully, any designers out there can relate to this video in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully this just serves as some bit of perspective for you and you can kind of take with it what you will. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to exploration, curiosity, trying shit out, seeing what works and what doesn't. And just growth over time. You can't do this stuff overnight. So let's get into it. Okay, so niche. The niched side of the fence here. So I have a few close friends that are absolutely killing it in their respective crafts and industry because of their specific style or their specific element that they focus on within design, illustration, or whatever. I have a friend who is so focused in just the world of typography, anything typography. They're starting to do more like mixed mediums with type, which is awesome. And it's not just digital, it's not just illustration, it's just the world of type, right? I have a great friend who is very specific in her style of illustrating people and these compositions, and it kind of lends itself more towards a specific audience and lots of fan art, and it's just beautiful work. It's one of those, like, you look at their work and you're like, yes, that is that person. Like, they definitely did this. You can recognize their stuff on the street any time of day. And again, they are absolutely killing it. There's also some people that, especially earlier on in their career, who try to kind of niche their talents and skills toward a specific industry. So like esports, for example. There's designers out there that are just esports designers, and there is usually kind of like a certain look and feel that is associated with esports, but it's still evolving. Like it still evolves. It's still branding and identity work and everything. But there's typically kind of like a certain tone that like you kind of train yourself to like work within in that field of design. So that's kind of the best example I can think of, since I've worked on a couple like esports related things, but that's another side of the niche side as well. But getting into the pros of being a more niche designer, illustrator, motion designer. As a niche designer, you are just more consistent with your quality of work, with the value of it, and just the frequency of it. You're extremely knowledgeable of your craft, and you know the process like no one's business. You're able to work faster, more efficiently. You know your shit better than anyone about the process, especially. You have your set things used to make what you make, and you just run with it. Like, there is no guesswork. And when it comes to like the freelance side, clients trust you so much more because they know exactly what they're going going to get from you. If they ask you about your process or your rate or whatever, you'll probably have the answers for that offhand because you've done it so many times and you know the work and the time that is involved with it. And so you're able to be a little more efficient even in that way too. And therefore more valuable, because time equals money, all that jazz. You're able to do more with the time that you've accrued. From more of like a social standpoint, and just kind of being like involved in your respective like industry community or whatever, you will kind of be known as like that person for like that style or that thing. There's another friend that I have who is an amazing illustrator. But he is very focused within the realm of like Halloween, very spooky and like kind of darker stuff. He's got a very specific style that he just kind of plays around with, but like the topics and the, I guess the subject matter that he focuses on makes him like the Halloween guy or the spooky guy. And so the kind of clients that he can get, if they're ever doing a campaign centered toward Halloween or just something that's more darker, he's a prime candidate to be able to work on those kind of projects. And on the flip side, getting into the cons of being a niche designer, illustrator, motion designer, it limits the work pool a little bit. Because you're being niche, some industries won't mesh with the kind of work that you do. And that's okay. I think that's totally fine. It being kind of like limited might be more of a good thing too, because you're able to market yourself a little harder toward the industries that do look at work like yours. But if there are jobs and opportunities a little more limited, you'll have to kind of market yourself harder, and to say like, I do this kind of work, here's some examples of it in context, other clients I've worked with, here's how my style can mesh with your campaign or your product or whatever. Another con too, from like the social side, I would imagine, and I could be very wrong on this because I'm not a part of the niche, side of things, but I would imagine that, being a little more selective about the kind of art and the platforms that you use and everything might also make your community and like the circle that you kind of reside in a little smaller. But again, like I think in general, especially nowadays, artists are meshing a bit more and learning from each other and just kind of seeing the other sides of mediums and everything. So this probably doesn't apply, but just a thought I had. If you have any thoughts on that, feel free to leave it in the comments. But yeah, just a thought. So getting into the more versatile side of being a designer, motion designer, illustrator, whatever, those with kind of the hyperactive curiosities like mine hopefully will resonate and understand as well. Getting into the pros of being more versatile in like multimedia and stuff like that, I think being more versatile kind of allows for more curiosity and being more open to different kinds of opportunities. Being more curious and being more willing to like learn new things and everything only allows for more opportunities in my mind. Another pro of being more versatile is that you can kind of speak to the processes of different art forms and different mediums. For example, I've dabbled in 3D for a while. It's very off and on. It's a totally different kind of design that takes my mind a lot longer, I think, to adjust to than other people. But with the experience I have had with 3D, I'm able to at least speak to some of the terminology and working within like production pipelines with brands and companies. When they refer or they have like a 3D artist come in and I need to give them assets for whatever reason, I can at least like understand what they're talking about and like what they need from me. So being a little more flexible in that way, I think, is another additional piece of value that only comes with experience. Like I said before, constantly learning is just such a fun part of being human, being an artist, designer, etc., whatever. It's the equivalent of like opening your own little mini portal into a totally different world that there are so many other experts in it, and getting to learn from them and see how they do what they do. And it's just a super fun way to be a part of all these different worlds. So yeah, just always keep learning. even if you're more on the niche side, always keep learning and keep growing with what you do. And with all the very versatile work that you might have, that ultimately shows in your portfolio that you have a very wide range. That is something that I've personally gotten from a couple freelance clients when they were trying to find an artist for a project and they liked my work, which is awesome. But yeah, a common note I've gotten before is that I have a wide range, which means I'm sure a lot of things to clients that are looking for artists, but would think that there's more possibility within just a single artist. And if they have different campaigns or projects that might lend itself to different art styles or mediums or anything, they could still just have the one person that they know that could still get the job done, even if it is a little different from the last project. So that's just speaking from experience, that having a very weird kind of versatile portfolio sometimes is a good thing. And it just kind of shows too, like, how they think and like where their mind goes and the stuff that they're actually interested in. And to that point too, sometimes companies do need a jack of all trades. Sometimes they need a point person that they can be like, oh, let's get them to do storyboards because they're an illustrator. And even though they do character design and they're building characters for our animation, like, they could also storyboard. Having your hands fully in the weeds and just experiencing all of those different kinds of processes is only going to make you more valuable, more experienced, and also it can kind of show you what kind of stuff you want to do more of and what you want to do less of. And more on like the personal work and like social side, you can essentially double, triple, or quadruple up all of your skills and little expertises here and there, all the mediums that you know how to use, and you can essentially just be a giant freaking powerhouse that can do all of these different roles that requires like a team or a pipeline, an assembly of Avengers essentially, and essentially just doing your own big project, or small, doesn't matter. But it only comes off as more impressive, right? I mean, being able to say, yeah, I was the storyboard artist and illustrator, motion designer, and I produced all the audio and blah, blah, blah. I mean, all of those things I think lends more credibility. Now, enough of bragging on the versatile design side. Let's get into the cons. So very contrary to what I mentioned about niche designers with clients, in that they don't quite know what to expect from you when you're a versatile designer and everything in your portfolio looks different, especially if you have one-off designs or one-off projects. That's a complete 180 from another. And they don't quite know exactly what your specialty is and what you can crank a ton out, and especially too if neither of you really know how long something's going to take. If you've only done it once or twice, it's harder to say like how long their project specifically is going to take for you, especially if there's higher stakes and tons more deliverables. And so quoting rates and money for that as well can be harder too. So yeah, on the financial side, you'll kind of have to have more of a rate structure set in place. If you have a different kind of project every time with a different client, you have to kind of start from scratch every time of figuring out in your mind what you should be charging. So that can get kind of tiresome and take up more time, which again, like I mentioned, for the niche designers, they have their process down, they know how long something takes, and they're able to quote certain variables that they just send it and it's done. But yeah, for versatile designers, especially if you're doing a mix of like 2D, 3D, and like all these other mediums that you're able to do that they're hiring you for, you're gonna have to get out your magic calculator and figure out what you think that is worth. Another con that I don't really know if it's a con actually, just more of like a general point, is that not all of your work will look the same. That's also okay. Sometimes it's fun to have like a little scrapbook, and I say scrapbook as in like imagine your Instagram grid or your portfolio, and you just see all these different parts of your artistic journey, as you will, and just what you wanted to work on at that time, or what client you had at that time, what you knew at that time also, and just experience and skill level. And it all kind of looks different, but there should always be kind of that unifying element that makes it you, and that you're still kind of able to be identified as like, yeah, that person worked on this project. Like, you can still kind of get a sense of that in your work. And so with all of that too, being versatile, it's harder to define what you're fully capable of, if that makes sense. I say I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, motion designer, the lengthiest title ever. And I've always kind of questioned myself with motion design because I'm self-taught when it comes to motion. It's always something I wanted to learn, but in art school, the major I had, which is advertising and graphic design, didn't really have a lot of room for motion design related stuff, so I had to kind of seek my own resources out and talk to experts in their field that knew what they were talking about and kind of find my own way through all of that. So it was a little harder, kind of trying to define to prospective clients of like, yeah, I'm a expert graphic designer. I've done that for years, pretty much all professionally. I've been a graphic designer on paper, but I can also illustrate. I started out illustrating and painting, and so I have that background. So there's different levels of those three skills, but I do know enough to be able to say it's in my title of like what I do, what I call myself to others, what I put on freaking LinkedIn, and try to kind of show all three of those things through all of my work, especially personal projects. So everything has a level of design, illustration, and usually I try to incorporate motion somehow. It's a long-winded way of saying it's harder to kind of define how good you are at those different skills or mediums that you know you're trying out. So all of that to say, all I can really say about which side of the coin or fence you should be on is truly up to you. It's not a good or a bad thing to be either. I've personally battled with this since college, especially when you start getting the intimidating professional real world talk from your professors and everything, and hearing what people want from you, what is going to scare them away. And I think that's super unfair because the world's always changing, design and the industries are always changing, needs for clients are always changing, and freelancing and all that stuff. So I don't think either is good or bad. I think it is truly I think it's truly tailored toward the person and just the choices they make, where their interests lie, and where they want to spend their time, and what skills they want to personally develop versus I'm okay with not learning that or not knowing as much about that. So yeah, that's where the learning comes in and the curiosity. If you're really struggling and you don't know where to kind of spend your time, think about maybe spending a month in each of those shoes and kind of seeing what's a month look like where I am just focused on learning 3D and just doing 3D design and that's it, versus a month where you're drawing in a sketchbook every day, but you're also learning 3D and you're also kind of learning some After Effects to animate 2D stuff, because then again, like, that's something beautiful where you can combine all those things later. But yeah, try both if you're really stuck. Just kind of give yourself like a timeline, an even timeline on each side. Overall though, the world needs both of us. The world needs versatile designers, and they need people that are very niched and specific to a certain craft. It all makes the design world go round, So anyway, I hope this was helpful as always. I know the struggle, I get it, but hopefully this kind of take this what you will kind of video. And if there's any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below and I'll be happy to answer them, or if other designers, illustrators, motion designers, etc. Finds that and can provide other value too, even better. So thanks again for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.